How do I pronounce this? Finding Kukan?
Finding Kukan.
Kukan? Mm-hmm. Is that Chinese?
Kukan is, it's Chinese. Kugan would be the more specific, but in 1942 they called it Kukan, and that's the name of the original film. That was the first American documentary to be awarded an Oscar.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, where did the original idea of this documentary came from then?
It came from our director, Robin Lung, who was searching for an Asian American heroine to do a documentary. And so she was researching a lot of ideas. And she kind of stumbled across this, just a little paragraph that this woman, Li-Ling Ai, who is Chinese American from Hawaii, made a documentary that won an Oscar in 1942. And she thought, how have I never heard about this woman before? Because, you know, Robin is also born and raised in Hawaii, also Chinese American. And how come I've never heard of the film before? And so that started some research, and the more she researched it, the more of a mystery it became, because the film was missing. No one had seen the film in like 60 years, and even the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences did not have a copy of the film.
Yeah.
And she thought, okay, well, that's crazy. How come the Chinese woman who claims to have produced it doesn't seem to have gotten credit for it, and how come the film is missing? So she started she got very obsessed with the idea of finding this film, and she found what is likely the only remaining print of the film Kukan. And so that's when she knew, okay, I think I've got a story here. And that launched her on what became an 8-year search for the truth about Li-Ling Ai and the making of Kukan.
So where was this film found at?
Well, it's a spoiler. So if I tell you, I'm going to spoil part of the movie for you.
You're telling us we have to watch it. Okay.
Yes, you know, through the amazing, you know, twists and turns of searching for things on the internet, she was able to track down the film's cinematographer, Ray Scott, who was the man who received the Oscar in 1942 for Kukan. And she tracked down his sons, one of whom she was on Facebook. And so he responded, and through some back and forth, then some messages, he says, well, you know, we might have a copy of that film around here somewhere.
After all these years, everyone is still around?
The cinematographer was deceased. Li-Ling Ai died in 2002. So the original people who made the film were all gone, but their descendants were still around. And so Robin was able to find Li-Ling Ai's descendants in Los Angeles, in Hawaii, and also in New York. And then she found Ray's people in Atlanta, in Georgia, and in Florida.
So how did you folks want to develop the narrative for the storyline, just based all around
that took a while to develop, because there was always a competition between, is this a film about the film, or is it a film about the woman who made the film, or is it a film about Ray Scott?
Yeah.
And ultimately, we chose to make a film about Li-Ling Ai because her story had been pretty much lost to history. And we became very interested in this idea of whose history gets written and preserved and whose history gets lost, because it wasn't, no one documented it at the time. And what we really learned was not only are women kind of undercredited for their roles and work in films in 1942, and sadly it hasn't changed that much today, but also, you know, women's histories get documented far, far less, and then women of color even less than that. And so we became very interested in this idea of lost histories and uncovering lost histories. And so Robin becomes kind of this history detective, and she takes us on this journey, and we, through watching the film, we the audience, learn what she learns as she learns it.
So how do you separate fact from fiction. Obviously, we're talking about something that was like 60, 70 years ago.
That's right. And Li Ling Ai, we also discovered, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. She liked to embellish her stories sometimes. And so we found that we had to really dig, because there was no book written about her. There were no, everything was going back to the original sources. So Robin went to dozens of archives and looked up newspaper articles on microfiche and went into people's personal letters, that were stored in collections and libraries around the country, and read their letters. So she was literally also just rifling through, her nephews and nieces' scrapbooks where they had saved letters from her, and pieced together through all these pieces of paper and ephemera what really happened. And the truth is that we don't know 100% because some of the facts never became clear. Like as hard as we researched and as long as Robin looked, there were dead ends. And so we present what we know to the audience, and then we tell the audience when we can't know at this point what happened. And so we just sort of leave some of the questions unanswered because that's real life.
How long was this entire process for?
Robin started working on the film 8 years ago.
Oh,
so,
wow.
it was an 8-year journey of researching and filming and hitting some incredible dead ends where we thought, oh no, what are we going to do? And then suddenly, some amazing development would happen, and then the film would take its twists and turns. So the film itself is a documentation of the process of making this film.
Is Robin's background like a history buff, or like is she a detective herself? What's going on?
She probably should open a private eye company at this point because she's very good at this. She's very persistent. But no, she had made one film before this, also a historical documentary, a short about the residence of the Queen in Hawaii, and really it just came down to her own passion and wanting to know more about this woman, because for those of us, looking for heroines that we can look up to, she thought, what would it have meant to me as a young woman if I had known that a Chinese woman from Hawaii had made a film that won an Oscar in the 30s? Like, might I have decided to become a filmmaker sooner in my life because I would have had this role model, right? So that's like a real palpable loss that she felt at not knowing, like somehow she had been robbed of a mentor or a heroine to look up to all those years before.
Yeah.
And so she really felt obligated to tell this story, and then she felt also a very, very close personal connection to Li Ling Ai, both being Chinese and both being from Hawaii, that she felt almost like Li Ling Ai was directing her in a way. Like Li Ling Ai's spirit was always very present with us.
So how were you brought on board, and when?
I'm an editor, and I also produce and I write, but I make my living as an editor of documentaries. And I work a lot with women and telling women's stories. And so Robin and I met at a Women in Film event and started chatting about our project. And really within the first 5 minutes, I said, I want to edit this film. It sounds great. And it wasn't even a film yet at that point. And that was 5 years ago. So I was on the film for 5 years, on and off, because Robin would have to raise money. She'd cobble together enough for us to work for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and we'd get together, edit as fast as we can for 2 or 3 weeks, and then, bye, gotta go raise more money. So it took a long time just because the funding and, all those kind of hurdles that independent filmmakers have to overcome, But I really believed in the story. I really believed in that Li Ling Ai's story deserved to be told. And then from there, we were just really committed to, when you take on the task as a storyteller to tell someone's story, we took it very seriously because we knew that the work that we did and what we present in this film would become the historical record.
Yeah.
Right? It would be the document that everyone forward would look to. So when you ask that question, truth versus fiction, we were very careful about not, like when we speculate, we openly speculate. Mm-hmm. We don't impose, you're always having to be careful about your own filter and, what your filter is imposing on the truth. But it's, for us, we were very careful knowing that future generations would be looking at this film and that would become the history of Li Ling Ai, at least the cornerstone of it.
Are there any footage from the original film going to be in this documentary?
Oh yeah. There's great footage from the original film that's in this documentary. There are 3. Again, this is a spoiler, so spoiler alert. But we uncovered 3 different copies of Kukan. A couple of them are partial copies, and within the partial copies, there's some glorious. This was shot in Kodachrome when Kodachrome was first invented. It was brand new technology, and this is the first color feature film that was shot in China. So it's the earliest color film of China that we know of that became a feature film.
And the picture quality is still good after 70, 80 years?
Again, not all of it is.
Yeah.
But we were really super lucky. There was a partial copy that was a film print that went to the National Archives very early on, and it's been sitting in the archives for all those years. And so that print has really good color and it's pretty good condition.
Now, how many hours of footage you guys?
Oh my gosh, you don't even want to know. I mean, I don't even know how many hours. It's
well, you're the editor.
It's 7 terabytes of footage, and to be honest,
7 terabytes.
I, the editor, never even looked at all the footage because there were lots of things that Robin shot that were, there were rabbit holes and then ultimately dead ends, and they ended up not being in the film. And so she would be, because our time was always had to be very budgeted and limited so that we could be as efficient as possible when we worked. If she didn't think it was going to be in the film, I never looked at it. So there's footage that I never even saw. But it has to be just hundreds of hours of footage because she filmed over 8 years.
Now, being with yourself and being with Robin as female filmmakers, does it make it easier to do a project like this, particularly a women's story?
There's nothing easy about this work. There really isn't. There's a lot about it that's pleasurable, because I think it's challenging in so many levels. It's challenging from the amount of time it takes, the amount of perseverance you have to have in order to stick to it, even when everything's kind of stacked against you. When you get those no's, those rejections from funders that are inevitable but still painful when they come. But if you really, really believe in the story, you believe in your character, you believe that you're going to change lives by telling the story that you're telling, then you're willing to persevere.
Who did you have to narrate the story?
We were so lucky to work with 2 fantastic actors who helped tell the historical story through the historical recreations. Calif, who is the voice of Li Ling Ai, and Daniel Day Kim, who plays the voice of Ray Scott, the cinematographer.
Wow. Yeah.
And they were both just wonderful to work with, and they breathed life into these characters. There was always this, we always knew that we were going to have to do some historical recreations because there were huge swaths of the story that only existed on paper. It was a newspaper article, it was a letter, and how were we going to make that into something that jumps off the screen and makes you really feel like you're there? And Kelly was incredible. She just channeled the character of Li Ling Ai. She's also Chinese from Hawaii, so it's like she knew her. She knew her on a spirit level, and she was really incredible when she delivered the lines. We would get in Hawaii what we call a chicken skin moment, where your hair just stands up and you go, "Oh my gosh, that sounds like her," And we. There was very I don't think we ever heard Lee Ling Ai's voice at that age, at the young age.
Yeah.
But Kelly was able to listen to her older woman voice, which we do have recordings of, and project what she must have been like at a young age. And only a really good actor can do that and bring that role to life in that way.
That's amazing. You guys literally recreated something that was decades ago.
Using original source material. So we were very with the historical recreations. You know, we used shadow sequences, so they're filmed in shadow and silhouette.
Yeah.
So right away you're not seeing something that's real. It allows a space for the viewer to be able to have their, kind of fill in the blanks in their own mind. What must have this been like, and what must it have looked like? But then to have the actors become those, kind of embody those words, the words of our characters, and bring them to life. It really makes it feel like you get to know that character on a much deeper level.
Wow. Definitely want to check this out.
Yes.
So why is it so important to show it here at the Asian Pacific Film Festival?
Well, this is an LA story on a lot of levels. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Science has been a great partner in making Finding Kukan, because when Robin discovered the film print, the first thing she did was, guys, we've got to get that film to the Academy. It's like we have to get it to an archive as soon as possible and see if it can be restored. And so, without any hesitation, the people at the Academy were like, FedEx it over. We want to see it. So they were as excited as we were that this print had been found, because they had been looking for it, for years and years as well. And so they couldn't believe it when somebody out of the blue called them and said, do you know about this film Kukan? I think I have a copy of it. So, and then of course Lee Ling Ai, she lived most of her adult life in New York City, but before going to New York, she spent a couple of years in Los Angeles, actually trying to break into show business, trying to have that dream. She was at that time a playwright, and she had written a play and was trying to figure out a way to get it produced or made into a film or something. And of course, it was the late 30s, and she ran into those barriers that a Chinese woman would have run into at that time, trying to break into show business. Basically, the only roles that were available to her at that time were sing-song girls and parts that she wasn't really interested in playing. And so it was interesting to just have that kind of parallel story again with what has been talked about so much recently with Oscars So White and Oscars So Male, that our heroine went through that in the 30s, and that actresses like Kelly Hu these days still going through that. So we still have a lot of work to do, and we're hoping that when people see Finding Kukan and learn about this history, that it will provide a way to have those conversations. So
let me wrap it up with one last question. Like with any other documentary, every documentary has a primary message. What are you hoping that the audiences learn from watching this documentary?
Even the histories of regular folks is important. The day-to-day lives of the people in your family are important. Your grandparents' stories, your parents' stories are important, and those need to be told and they need to be documented in some way. And those photographs and the personal papers, those become a history, and they should be valued and they should be archived for future generations. And so, if it hadn't been for Lee Ling Ai's descendants, a couple of key descendants who just didn't take all the paper and throw it into a dumpster, but actually saved the boxes of papers that then Robin was able to go through decades later and go, oh my God, here it is, here's the letter, have those kind of discovery moments. That descendant couldn't have known what she had. She really didn't know her own great aunt's history. But now that history is something that's kind of bigger than all of us. And that might be in your house, that might be in your neighbor's house, so.
Now I'm going to have to look through my own trash.
Yes, there you go.
Well, anyways, hey, this has been a pleasurable conversation.
Absolutely.
And be sure to keep your browsers tuned to lrmonline.com for the latest news, bochinche, and analysis.